After the Light Died, Chapter 12, The Price of Fear. Lucretia drummed her fingers on the desk. The endless tap, tap, tap beat on repeat in her mind, louder than thunder to her head. It was as gentle as the gentlest of spring rains in reality. But what was reality compared to her thoughts? Compared to the burden of command and the expansion of Terran security? "Conquer or die," she said, and closed the transmission to her armada. Outside, she could hear the celebrations as the Terran population celebrated their victory over the slugs. Her brother's declaration of a holiday was more than she expected for such a trivial victory, but credit where credit was due, it kept the people happy. Outside, food trains were rolling over elevated rails and throwing bread, sweets, and packaged cut meats to the people, all bearing his face, the family name, and the motto of revolution. Only the free May feast it hit hard, and every woman and man felt free when their bellies were full. The noise of the parades and dancing in the streets was excessive in her mind, given how trivial the war was, and how few casualties they'd suffered. Only 3 ships were destroyed, and those were 8-man crew frigates. But the memory of their oppression and the looming threat of the divine assholes loomed so large in the public consciousness that a morale-boosting victory over Xenos was too important to ignore. Still, they're so ignorant, so stupid, it barely takes more than a cinematic rendering and some ominous music to make them think weaker Xenos are an existential threat. Lucretia rolled her eyes. Her younger brother, for all his acumen, believed his own bullshit a little too much. Just because they're not a threat now doesn't mean they won't be tomorrow. It was a true but useless statement, since it could be said of anything infinitely down to the lowest slime cluster on the alien oceans that might one day evolve intelligence. Still, the actions kept the fleet sharp and expanded Absolutia's power and influence, so she bore her waiting with patience. "Why are you doing this?" The cry came out as a desperate screech from the chittering tongue of the insectoid race. The translation was automated. It had to be. There was no way the human tongue could mimic the sideways mouths and clicking jaws of the alien Kokinis. Similarly, the inflection of desperation had to be translated based on AI, noted context clues. "I wonder if the machine got it right," Lucretia pondered as another transmission came in. "Please, stop!" The transmission was stunted as the ships sent to meet her armada were destroyed in a rain of plasmic torpedoes and blaster fire that ripped through the space between them. The flames in space burned the Kokini people as easily as a flamethrower torched an anthill. Their fleet was only 9 ships. They held only 3 systems, one of which had no colony at all. Their fleet had come out to defend the only colony beyond their homeworld. The starbase that remained continued to fire lasers toward the Terran armada. The beams of light were too fast for the naked eye to see, but she could see the flaring shields in real time. Her armada was only at half capacity for ammunition, but it hardly mattered. The largest ships of the Kokini were no bigger than cruisers. Their elongated designs kept only a front-facing cannon, as well as one above and one below, able to target her ships. The majority of their armaments above and below the ship were meant for broadside attacks en masse. But they were never getting that close. In theory, they could race in, broadside her ships, and do substantial damage. In practice, what should have easily been able to avoid her ship's fire was hit squarely on the nose. The ships erupted one by one in rapid succession before they had closed even half the distance, and Absolutia's fleet then spread out and hit the starbase from 3 sides. The overloaded shields crashed under the first barrage, flaring bright before the second barrage shattered the weapons platforms and destroyed any meaningful chance of fighting back. The Terran boarding ship slammed into the sides along multiple levels, and her comm cracking teams quickly routed the audio and visual data to her tertiary monitor. The Star Marines fired plasma rifles down the long, narrow hallways, not to hit anything, but to keep the slender-bodied Kikini from blocking the advance. Hand-to-hand was the Terran way by preference, always had been, ever since Carthage burned Remi, and ever since Remi roared back in the Sixth Punic War to burn Carthage and salt their fields to destroy it forevermore. The ways of Terran war favored gutting the enemy up close and personal. The Kikini were unprepared for this level of violence, that much was plain. Their screeches were so high-pitched Lucretia had to lower the volume, and roars of Terran battle cries slowly drowned out the screeches. The long chainsaw blades that were the favored close weapon of the Star Marines ripped through the long Kikini necks and sent chattering heads falling to the floor to be crushed to pulp beneath Terran boots. The long curved arms of the Kikini were equipped with sharp blades of their own, but because of their naturally hooked shape, their first blows almost always came from above, and when the Terrans blocked the first hit, there was no chance for a second. Keening cries of pain became fewer and fewer. Plasma burned through walls and slew those beyond, and green blood ran like little streams down every hall until there were no Kikini left to kill. "Please!" The plea came in from the final holdout. But the transmission was radio, so it was at least 6 minutes delayed, which meant by the time Lucretia heard it, the beggar was already dead for a minute or two. "Bomb that colony out of existence." She gave the order before anyone could ask, and the fleet took position above the Kikini colony. With an indiscriminate policy of bombardment and with no way to fight back, the colony stood no chance. Even so, she did not stay to watch. It would take days, even weeks, to wipe out. And so she routed the transmission of what was happening directly to the Kikini Council. "Why are you doing this?" That phrase returned a week later when the population of the colony was reduced from 5 million down to 500,000 and falling. They'd asked that every day since the bombardment began. And every day she had only repeated the automated demand for their unconditional surrender. But with the population of the colony on the verge of final annihilation, Lucretia chose to respond differently. "I won't trouble you with pretense. Empires do not exist because one side is right or just. They exist because some are strong and some are weak. The strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. This was the law of all nations on Terra from ancient times to present. So the galaxy has taught us this is also the rule of the stars. The galaxy stood by while we were weak and enslaved, and so we have become strong. Thus, we may do as was done to us, so that we will never be the fallen ones again. You will submit to us, or you will submit to time and cease to exist at all." They must have been waiting for her to say something, anything, because the response came in only minutes later. "Please, we have done nothing to your people. How will it look to the galaxy if you conquer us and make war for no cause at all?" Lucretia did not delay in her own answer. "It is true, you have done us no wrong, but there is also no reason to leave you here until you do. More than that, your neutrality offers us nothing. If a power as small as yours can remain independent right on the doorstep of Absolutia, then what does that say about our power that you have not bowed to us? The galaxy will look negatively at our power if small states exist to defy us. They will think we are afraid, and those who are afraid are vulnerable to those who are brave. You can't possibly think this way. War with us for nothing, and the whole galaxy will see you for the warmongers you are. They will condemn you. They will ally against you. You will have to fight all of it someday." The Kikini reply was so naive that Lucretia almost laughed at them. "You say this like the galaxy at large cares for anyone but their own? No, they don't. We Terrans know this better than anyone. Let the galaxy hate us as long as they fear us more. The galaxy will do nothing for you. No one is coming to save you. No one cares. They care enough, maybe, to condemn us, but between the condemnation of bombs and words, I prefer to be on the receiving end of words. I don't envy your folly, Kikinians. Your arguments hinge on a hope for the future, but continue to resist, and you have no future. Only history that will be picked over by our archaeologists, Lucretia declared, and then dragged the casualty report over into the data transmission. There are now only 300,000 of your people alive on this colony. We have identified all their hiding places. In 2 days it will be half this. In 2 more it will be halved again. In 1 day beyond that there will be only around 5,000 survivors scattered in forests and caves to be hunted down by our colonists. When that ship reaches this sector, our armada will head for your homeworld. In that time you might raise 1 frigate to fend us off, and we both know how that will go. If I have to destroy a ship when I arrive, I will destroy your homeworld the same way as I destroy your colony. Submit before my arrival, or history will mock your folly as much as it reveres your courage. She then killed the transmission and kept any attempt to reach her again, blocked until the day the colony ship entered the system. Lucretia checked the reports 1 more time before she ordered her fleet to move on. What do you know? I was wrong. They're hardier than I thought, she chuckled. There were 10,000 Kikini life signs scattered around the world, some in groups as small as 4 or 5, others as large as 150. Only 1 of the 12 continents was completely empty of Kikini life, and that would be the most likely first city site. I wonder how long it will be before the colonists start encountering those creatures again. 50 years? 100? It was an idle question, hardly important in the scheme of things. The Kikini colonists had almost nothing in the way of advanced weapons, and those were projectile-based, requiring manufactured ammunition. It meant they would soon resort to more primitive methods. Spears, claws, snares. They wouldn't dare to farm, which meant they were effectively reduced to hunters and gatherers. In a generation or 2, they'll have lost all memory of advanced technology. By the time our colonists start settling the other continents in the next 100 or 200 years, all that will be remembered of these days will be some legend of a war in heaven. Then they'll be gone. Lucretia let the thought slip away from the present moment into the place where all thoughts go to disappear, and focused on the moment. The departure of her fleet for the last home of the Kikini, and only when the fleet was preparing to engage their warp engines did she unblock the homeworld's transmissions to see if they had chosen to surrender or die. It wasn't long before she reached for the direct line to her brother's office and said, "Magnus, order another colony ship to be constructed. There'll be a new world to settle in about a month." Robert held his tongue, but only just barely. Susan, however, didn't bother at all. "Look, even if you're right, and that is a big if, Harold is even more right than you. We can't undo what was done, but there's no reason to die now. What'll you really accomplish? You think you can bring back the creepers?" she demanded, with eyes filled with concern. But demand or no, she was still setting up the harness that would take them down into the next canyon. The zip noise was quiet, but the fact that they were in a restricted area weighed heavily on them both. Robert suspected that his wife was more complaining just to talk, rather than saying anything she actually believed. "No, but I can make sure it's not forgotten at least," Robert said when he hooked his carabine into the loop on the line. "Some things you can't make right no matter what you do, but you can stop doing wrong and you can at least own up to what you've done. That's not nothing." Susan hooked herself into the line, too. Her heart warmed up a little with his words. It was hard for her not to love a man like him. Conscience seemed to define him. Always a kind word, always a gentle touch. Quick to apologize, slow to anger, the business-like nature of their arrangement was fast giving way to real care for him as a man. "You're going to make me a widow if you keep doing this," she said when he went over the edge and began to walk his way down the cliff. He chuckled a little, like, "You're not with me. I'm not the one telling everybody about your ridiculous theory." She was lying. He knew she was lying, and she knew she was lying. The truth was impossible for her to deny, but it was a pretense she maintained anyway for reasons neither of them really understood. The wind in this particular canyon blew especially hard and especially loud. Dead quiet above. When you went down below, the wind became a roar that drowned out even the raging waters. If it weren't for their helmets that filtered noise and allowed them to speak through short-range signals, they wouldn't be able to converse at all. Down below, waters continued to bash against the rocks, but the stains of alien blood remained on the stones. For whatever reason, their blood just would not fade away. Robert landed first, his feet finding solid ground with ease. He held the rope on belay, and when Susan came close, he took her thin waist in his thick hands and helped her hop down in front of himself. "This can't go on, you know," she said, changing tact. "I'm the first man to ever set foot on an alien world. They won't target me." "That would be crazy," Robert asserted. "I'm a hero of Terra." "Heroes aren't immortal." Harold has a point. It's only gone on this long because they can't monitor all these sites, and they don't have any regulators out this way yet. But if you keep telling people about your findings, sooner or later you'll get the wrong set of eyes on you, then who knows, Susan pointed out. "Then why are you still with me?" Robert asked, and walked toward the shadow of moss that he suspected hid another cave. "Because I love you, you jerk," she thought. "Because I have to keep my baby's father from dying of testosterone poisoning before it's born," she thought. "Because we're a team. And what's the point of a team if half of it is always on the damn bench doing fuck all?" she said out loud. "Besides, this takes less time with the two of us, and that means less opportunity for you to do something dangerous." He hesitated when he glanced behind her, then looked ahead and activated his recording device. "I'm glad to have you." Now focused on the black moss, he could see it was different than a natural growth. As he drew closer, he ran his hand over the surface. It had been laid over a rock in such a way that it gave the appearance of shadow, and it covered enough that it actually hid the real shadow. Another cave entrance. Robert lingered, smearing some of the moist moss away. An animal skin lay beneath. Moss has been grown deliberately over an animal skin that has been artificially stretched. This clearly shows tool use and an advanced understanding of animal butchering and of at least some knowledge of plant growth. "Something like this goes beyond simple animal instincts," Robert said, and began to peel the skin away from the rocky surface. As you can see, this was set deliberately. He then crouched down in the corner amidst a cluster of rocks were some hollowed-out animal skulls. "This," he said, and picked one up, there was still water held within, "is a bowl. You can see the way it was cut into shape artificially with stone tools." He pointed to the various marks on the bone and picked up a stray stone fragment, which he then put edge in against a mark, showing a perfect match. "This wasn't removing a problem species, this was a genocide," he said, and walked inside the cave. Susan followed behind, remaining quiet while he documented everything, silently pointing out anything he missed. The recordings paused when they wanted to speak. She remained a silent witness to his work, and a comfort when his emotions overcame him when they found a massacre site where a clutch of small aliens died just behind the bodies of their parents. She secured the DNA samples he gathered and stored them on the belt around her waist, and took part in inscribing names on each little tube. Clubfoot, for one that had a deformed leg that caused a limp, proved that they cared for their injured. Gandalf, for one that was of advanced age and had long before his death lost all his teeth. Swift Runner, for a small one that had managed to escape farther than any of its peers before it died cornered and alone at the end of a tunnel. One that had died surrounded by red human blood they named Achilles. A giant figure in life it must have been ugly to encounter firsthand. And from the injury, the first thing to bring him down was the loss of the base of its leg and what passed for a foot. This particular cave proved to be beyond massive, with a network of tunnels, many of which ended in more nests where a massacre had taken place. And no matter where they went, they found evidence of advanced social dynamics on par with what any human society was capable of. All that separated the two but the difference of flesh was the difference between life and death. Or so Robert and Susan held that to be true, until the stirring noise in a small crevice they nearly missed suggested that they were not alone.